fill sand is much coarser. Both sands are bound with water. This forms the bottom half of the mold. Once the bottom half is packed, it's turned over and the matchboard removed. The patterns usually come out with the matchboard. They have to be placed back in the cavity before the top half of the mold can be made. Parting powder, I use ground soft coal, is used to keep the two halves of the mold from sticking together. The parting powder is cleaned off the patterns. A piece of wood forms the sprue, the hole through which the brass is poured. Facing sand is then placed on the patterns and the top half is rammed down the same as the bottom. Once this is complete, the sprue is removed and the mold taken apart. Now the patterns have to be removed. They are first loosened by tapping. These have to be lifted out carefully so they won't break the mold. Gates are cut with a knife. These allow the brass to flow from the sprue to the patterns. Holes are punched through the top half of the mold with to allow escape ahead of the brass. After the holes are punched through, the mold is put back together and is ready for pouring. Pieces of iron are placed on top of the mold to keep the wooden part from burning. Once we have remelted a pot of brass a great deal, we always mix it up and throw in some fresh scrap. The difficulty in cooking the same brass over and over is that you boil the zinc out of it, leaving too much copper. The brass is ready to pour when it's boiling. When the tongs are laid on the top of the crucible, you can feel it churning. The blue smoke is zinc vapor. It only takes about a minute for the brass to harden. The sprue and gates are cut off and remelted. The butt plate mold is harder to make than the others because it has to be built up on each side. This makes it trickier to take apart without breaking. Sheet brass is first cast into a flat ingot. Then it's hammered on the anvil with the flatter. The hammering makes the piece much tougher and of denser quality throughout. The brass hardens from hammering, so it is heated red hot and quenched in water to anneal it, and then hammered and annealed several more times.
American rifles were usually stocked with curly maple. A gunsmith preferred to allow the plank to dry 2 years before he used it. Most craftsmen worked either wood or metal. A gunsmith had to be expert in both. The stock is more than just a piece of wood to carry the barrel and the lock. It had to be as carefully shaped and finished as a piece of sculpture. The character of its lines, proportions, and decoration distinguished the gunsmith, who was an artist, from one who merely managed to get it all to fit together somehow. The The process began with bedding the barrel. The many other elements of the gun were proportioned and positioned in relation to it.
First, the center line is scribed on the stock. Then the breech plug is inlet at the back of the stock. This keeps the barrel from turning as it is being inlet. After the rough outline of the barrel has been scribed, the channel is roughed out with round gouges. Once the barrel channel is roughed out, it is then smoothed with an octagon-shaped plane. Since the barrel is tapered, the plane cannot be used to cut the channel to the final dimension. All the sides have to be fit by hand. The bottom of the barrel is sooted over the candle. When the barrel is squeezed in place, the soot leaves a dark mark on the high spots. These are then chiseled off and the barrel refit until it lays in tight. After the barrel is fit, the excess wood is sawed off the fore end. The ramrod is carried on the bottom of the stock. A channel for it is cut with gouges and a plane, then smoothed down with a round file. "12 to 14 inches from the breech end, the ramrod enters the stock, so a hole has to be drilled for that length. When starting the bit, it's tied down with a piece of rawhide. If this is drilled properly, the wood left between the hole and the barrel will be 1/8 of an inch thick. Once the hole is complete, a test hole is drilled down from the back of the barrel channel to make sure the ramrod hole is exactly parallel to it. The butt plate is filed only on the fitting edges now. The outside of the butt plate is filed later. Fitting the butt plate governs all the shaping of the butt stock. In making the stock, the 3 important things are getting the barrel inlet, the ramrod channel drilled, and the butt plate fitted. You can't do any stock shaping until all of these things are fixed. Keeping the chisel very sharp is important while cutting hard maple on the end grain.
When the threads of a wood screw are filed by hand, each screw is going to be different. This means that when the butt plate is removed, as it is many times during the making of the gun, each screw must go back into the hole it came out of. Now that his 3 reference points, barrel, ramrod channel, and butt plate, are determined, the gunsmith can remove the bulk of the wood and establish the basic shape of the gun. He does not, however, finish it completely at this time. The final shaping is done in relation to the other parts that must still be added. The first part